Okay, so my name is Matos. I currently working at Faculdade de Ciências here at the University of Lisbon. Let me just take off my mask. And I will join Technico next year in July, but I'm starting to work and meet the people that are working here and starting with some research. So the presentation I'm going to do today is called Blockchain Will Save Lives. So kind of a big assumption and a very strong claim. And so blockchain will save lives. Well, probably not, but can it help? Well, we'll find out in this presentation. But before I jump into this topic, let me just introduce myself and some of the work that I've been doing in the last couple of years. And then I'll get into how blockchain can really save lives in the future. So who am I? I am an engineer. I studied computer science and engineering at Faculdade de Ciências at the University of Lisbon. And then I took a PhD here at the Institute Superior Technique. So my background has always been about computer science and engineering. I've been working in a couple of companies in the industry, and all of my work experience have been in the field of software engineering, telecommunications, and data science. In terms of research, I've been doing some research since my bachelor. I started working on people execution engines, then I jumped to consensus in mobile ad hoc networks. Then I did some research in finding novel and new intrusion recovery systems and mechanisms for cloud computing. And then, and more recently, which is what I'm doing currently, I've been working with detecting software vulnerabilities using machine learning. But during my PhD, while I was doing some research with cloud computing and intrusion recovery, one of the topics that came around was electronic health records and how can we use the cloud to securely store electronic health records. And this is kind of a tricky topic because electronic health records are all those records that hold information about patients in the hospitals and in the National Health Service. And these are very, very important records because they can help the medical staff find the correct diagnosis for the patients, and with that, they can probably save lives. So it's very important that this data is always accessible to the medical staff. It should be up to date as much as possible, and it should be authentic and private because we are talking about very, very personal data about the patients, and we don't want this data to be accessible by anyone other than the medical staff and the patients. One example of an application that uses these medical records is electronic health records. In Portugal is this one. This application, this app is called SNS24, and it's now very, very known by the Portuguese people because it's the application that Portuguese people use to access their vaccination passports and the diagnosis of the COVID disease. But there's more to this application than just the COVID passport and all the vaccination passport. It also helps the patients access their own information regarding the medical records. So using this app, patients can consult their medical records, the previous appointments, future appointments, the regular medication. So this is kind of an example of how we can use electronic health records. The problem with this application is how data is stored, and data is stored centrally. So there is like a central server controlled by the National Health Service that holds all this information for this application. And the problem with this is that when you centralize all the information, we are vulnerable to all sorts of attacks. One example of these sorts of attacks is usually ransomware attacks that have been very, very common in the last few years. And when one attack, like one of these ransomware attacks, targets one of these servers that holds medical information about patients, it can be very, very, very bad because it can actually result in patients not having the correct treatment or the correct diagnosis in time, and eventually leads to patients' death. This is a statistic, a very recent statistics. In October 2020, there was a ransomware attack in Delaware, and actually there was a spike in the number of deaths in that hospital during that period. So it's actually true that these kind of attacks can actually kill people, and it is very important that we can avoid this. So maybe we can leverage the cloud computing to store this data and ensure that these kind of problems do not occur. But we have two different problems here, which are, on one hand, we have the requirements of the electronic health records, which are supposed to be always accessible, private, they should be authentic. And on the other hand, we have the cloud servers, which are public by nature. They are highly available, which is a good thing if you want to ensure availability of data. But the fact that they are public can be can cause other kinds of problems, because the medical records of the patients can fall into some other people's hands, and we don't want that. So it should be possible to create like a cloud storage, or more specifically, improved cloud service that allows us to store all these medical records, but ensuring that we maintain the highly improved availability, highly improved integrity, and we have specific and specialized access control mechanisms to ensure that only the correct people have access to those records. And one of the examples that we came across that we actually there is already in the literature one thing called Cloud of Clouds that allows us to build a better cloud composed by several clouds. And this system allows us to create a storage service in which data is splitted and sent across several servers, which are located in different cloud servers, allowing us to improve the availability of the data. So we thought maybe we can use this kind of architecture to store our medical records. And that's what we did. We came up with this architecture that allows us to store data in this cloud of clouds paradigm, and with a better access control mechanisms, we ensure that only the correct people access their data, which in this case is the data owners, which are the patients, and the patients with their medical doctors. So only the patients are allowed to access their data, and the doctors, once they have the patients with them. We also use other techniques such as secret sharing to ensure that data that the keys that are encrypting the data are split across the data owners and the facilities, the hospitals, and the control mechanism that is used. So we already have this cloud of cloud system that can hold all this information. So what can blockchain bring here to improve this system? Well, maybe if we have a blockchain, we can create a distributed architecture to store these medical records that allows it to scale even better than using the cloud of clouds. Because the problem with cloud of clouds is that it is very difficult to implement, to configure, and to scale. We can set up maybe 4 different cloud of cloud composed by 4 different cloud providers. But if we want to add another cloud provider, it becomes very difficult and very complex to do so. So maybe we can use blockchain to do so. And with blockchain, we can still guarantee these properties. We can still guarantee that we still have an improved integrity level. We can still guarantee that we have maybe an even better availability guarantee by adding more servers to the blockchain. And we can also improve privacy, allowing that only the correct people have access to its own data. So maybe we can use this. And this is actually something that is being used currently by different organizations at different hospitals. Here are 4 examples. All these 4 examples are some companies that are currently working with blockchain to support storage services to store electronic health records. And these are only 4 examples. There are at least 10 examples, but we still have a couple of problems to deal with, because currently these companies, they only act in specific countries, because the way that the regulatory and the legal system works, it kind of blocks how we can use blockchain and cloud storage to store medical records. So there are a lot of limitations that needs to be dealt with. And unfortunately, these companies, they work great in their own countries, but they cannot be used in Portugal, for example, due to our Portuguese law. So there's some more that needs to be done here, and I think it will be very beneficial if we can leverage our current National Lab Service to use this technology. I think it can bring a lot of advantages to the way we store medical records. So, given this very brief presentation, will blockchain actually save lives? Well, not really, because I believe that medical people and correct medication save lives, but I'm pretty sure that using blockchain can help save lives in the future. So thank you. If you have any comments or questions, I'll be very happy to. Yes.
I was wondering, because the electronic health record has been like a promise for a long time, and it always failed to succeed. Do you think it's really an infrastructure problem, or is it more an issue of how the organizations, the government, the citizens trust in sharing their data? So do you think it's an infrastructure problem? Is it an adoption problem? Is it a user experience problem?
I think it's mostly a people problem because people have kind of created an obstacle to use novel technologies and novel services. Of course, there's a lot of problems with regulatory, as I come across while doing this research, but mostly it's about the people. And in order to this system to work, we have to convince a lot of different organizations, so a lot of people, to actually adopt this technology. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. This only works if suddenly the entire national health service starts using this. Because if only just one hospital in Portugal uses this, it's not very valuable.
And do you think blockchain can solve this problem?
I think blockchain can actually solve this problem in a different way that we already solved a couple of years ago, because it allows us to maybe build a system that is easier to configure, easier to scale than the one that I presented in that complex architecture. I think that it can help in that way. Yes.
So, quick question: what would you, you've got a background in telco. What do you think about combining blockchain and telco networks?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's something that I'll probably have to think about, because telecom is kind of a broader area and they have a lot of applications, of different applications. I don't think I can answer this right now, but that's something that I will think about in the future. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I have one question.
Yes, of course.
So one of the things that really interests me about this application of blockchain or distributed systems in general is that you seem to have competing interests with privacy on the one hand, which could potentially fail as you introduce more actors, some who might be malicious, and availability and scalability, which is why you want a distributed system in
Yes.
place. So when you're thinking about the application of blockchain to this, are you thinking about a strongly permissioned blockchain where there's some rigorous understanding of who the identity of each of the people who run the nodes are, or something more open where you use a clever crypto solution to protect the data off-chain, but all of the data is still held on-chain publicly?
That's a good question. Well, I was thinking about a more permissioned blockchain due to the regulatory in terms of the medical system, because it really requires that it has a lot of rules how data can be stored and accessed, and that's why I think this only would pass if it was a permissioned blockchain, unfortunately. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.